Let me again extend a welcome to HLS810, Infrastructure Protection and Risk Analysis here at Eastern Kentucky University. This first week, we're going to spend some time overviewing the course content while defining several key terms that you're going to use throughout your career, but specifically during the course. It's important to note that every piece of necessary information is not going to be presented during these short videos. So it's important for you to read the required readings in their entirety. Supporting information that may not be presented will provide you additional context that's going to help you better understand the main concept identified. First, it's important to ensure that we're working off common terminology. So let's discuss the term critical infrastructure. Now, not to overemphasize the importance of the concept, but critical infrastructure is the backbone of the nation's economy, its security, and its health. Your everyday lives, you're going to experience critical infrastructure morning, noon, and night. The heat in your homes, the water in your shower, the transportation to get you to work and to school, the computer that you're on right now. Well, I guess you get the point. Infrastructure is critical to our daily needs. Now, according to our friends at the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, critical infrastructure is defined as the assets, systems, and networks, whether physical or virtual, so vital to the United States that their incapacitation or destruction would have a debilitating effect on our security, national economic security, national public health or safety, or any combination thereof. This all-encompassing definition will help you understand why we devote not only substantial government resources to the protection of infrastructure, but also this and many other courses and trainings being held across the United States. Next, throughout the course, we're going to refer to 16 different critical infrastructure sectors that have been identified by DHS. Now, DHS has a great website that you can go take a look at these sectors. You can take a look on the course library guide that can be found using any search engine. At that site, you're going to find a sector overview, a sector-specific plan for most sectors. A few of them are still for official use only and you can't get to them. Sector resources and sector trainings. Additionally, these sectors are going to be very important to you when you tackle your course project. Obviously, I'm not going to cover all 16 sectors in 6 weeks with you, but this video, sites that I just mentioned, the site that I just mentioned, will provide you all the information you need and even a little bit more. Further, I believe our time together is spent better on a few different topics. However, look at those 16 sectors, and I'm sure you'll be able to identify how you use the majority of them on a daily basis. As noted earlier, these sectors comprise the backbone of America and keep this country running. For the next few moments, I'm going to take some time to put the importance of critical infrastructure into perspective for you. I know that I often underappreciate the criticality of these sectors and what life would be without them. So first, let's talk about water that we use every day. Do you know there's approximately 160,000 public drinking water systems in the United States, where 84% of Americans receive potable water? Now, on the other side of the water equation, there's approximately 16,000 publicly owned wastewater treatment systems in the country. Last year, I took a group of students to a local wastewater plant to conduct a risk assessment. This is an experience that none of us will ever be able to forget. Now, every day I come to work, I travel up and down I-75 to get to and from Eastern Kentucky University. While I only travel about 15 miles, there's an additional 919 miles of interstate highway here in the U.S. Additionally, there's over 115,000 miles of other national highway system roads and 3.8 million miles of other roads in the country. Last, it's very possible that you frequently travel on one of the 600,000 bridges that span over 20 feet in this country. Now, all these statistics make my brain hurt a bit. However, they serve a purpose. While there are many more statistics I could keep droning on about, these demonstrate the fact that there are a plethora of infrastructures and assets that need to be protected every day in order to continue the way of life to which we have been accustomed. During this course, we're going to identify several ways to enable this protection in our communities and throughout the country. One of the key ways to ensure protection of our infrastructure assets is to understand what is at stake and what can threaten the regular operation of these assets. Threats to the nation's infrastructure come from many different directions: terrorist attacks, natural disasters, cyber attacks, infectious diseases, decay. During the second half of the course, you're going to learn more about threat analysis and how to properly identify the likelihood and consequences of potential threats against infrastructure. Additionally, it's important to understand the impact that even a small disruption may have on the citizens that you're going to serve. We all know the inconvenience that we feel when the power goes out or even when the cable or satellite fails to operate correctly. However, amplify that disruption due to one of the threats previously noted, and the impact will be immense. Not only will these disruptions have devastating effects on citizens from a psychological and human needs perspective, but our economy will also feel the effects. Last, it's important to understand the concepts of dependencies and interdependencies in critical infrastructure protection. The interconnected nature of our infrastructures means that an event in one sector can cause a significant disruption across multiple sectors. Relatedly, sectors rely upon one another in order to ensure the continuation of services. A one-way relationship is referred to as a dependency. Now, this is where a sector or an asset or infrastructure relies on inputs, interactions, or other requirements from another sector in order to function. Similarly, an interdependency means that both sectors rely on each other in order to function. For example, the nuclear sector is interdependent with the chemical sector as a consumer of chemicals through the nuclear fuel cycle and reactor sites. Interdependent with the energy sector as supplier of electricity of our nation's electrical grid, and with the transportation sector through the movement of radioactive materials. Now that we have a pretty good understanding of criticality of our infrastructure, let's shift gears a little bit. Let's talk about the current state or the current condition of our infrastructure. For this week's readings, you're going to read about decades of neglect that have impacted our infrastructure. Whether you blame it on political paralysis in our government or some other reason, the condition of infrastructure that Homeland Security and other public sector entities are charged with is alarming. Now, when President Eisenhower left office in 1960, more than 12% of our U.S. budget was spent on infrastructure. Today, that figure has reduced drastically to under 3%. As has been noted on several other problem areas in our country, these problems will be the one that our children and our grandchildren will find critical. Let's look at some of the areas of concern. As with the statistics I noted earlier on the expanse of the infrastructure, there are many other examples that I could provide on the current condition of that same infrastructure. For example, according to the New York Times, a significant water line bursts on average every 2 minutes somewhere in the country. Now, folks, that's 720 times a day. I'm sure you have experienced a prolonged time without running water and the difficulties that are associated with that condition. Now, according to the ASCE report card that you're going to read this week, the American Water Works Association, it would take over $1 trillion to fix every pipe that needs to be replaced in this country. An electrical power grid is an interconnected network for delivering electricity from the supplier to the consumers. The power grid is increasingly maxed out, disrupting millions of lives and putting entire cities in the dark. There are many reasons for this disruption: population growth, aging equipment, outdated engineering practices. Some of you may remember a couple decades ago the Northeast blackout of 2003. This was the world's second most widespread blackout in history. The outage affected 10 million people in Canada and 45 million people in 8 U.S. states. Last, tens of thousands of bridges, structurally deficient or functionally obsolete, and a third of our highways are in poor or mediocre shape. According to that same ASCE report card, 1 in 9 bridges is rated as structurally inefficient. It's going to take billions of dollars for repair. So while we're talking about current events, let me remind you about the August 2007 collapse of the I-35 bridge in Minnesota. This 8-lane steel truss arch bridge crossed the Mississippi River and carried approximately 140,000 vehicles on a daily basis. The bridge collapsed during rush hour, killed 13 people, injured 145. So the question is, why are we letting this happen? Why is infrastructure crumbling is likely on your mind? There are 3 main reasons I want to cover with you for possible reasons for infrastructure failure. Some of these reasons have been previously identified at a high level, but I want to provide some additional context. Now, first, as noted, the investment is less than 3%. In fact, one study of the National Association of Manufacturers revealed that infrastructure investment in highway systems declined 3.5% every year in the 9 years from 2003 to 2012. Further, the ASC report card notes that our country will need to invest nearly $3 trillion with a T dollars by 2020 in order to remedy deficiencies in the U.S. infrastructure. Next, it's estimated that the U.S. has a total resident population of 321 million. 81% of those individuals reside in cities and suburbs. The population has quadrupled during the 20th century at a growth rate of approximately 1.3% a year. Last, the U.S. Census Bureau predicts a population of over 400 million by 2050. These statistics go to show one key element with regards to infrastructure. The number of people using our infrastructure will steadily increase. It must be kept in mind that many of the infrastructures are using engineering and building practices that are decades old. Additionally, most were designed for use by a certain number of people over a certain time period. As that population increases and the infrastructure ages, the results will be catastrophic. Last, the golden age of American infrastructure was during the post-World War II era. While many of the infrastructures were made to last during that period, their expiration date is unfortunately upon us in many situations. New materials, techniques, and knowledge in the engineering and building world will allow for stronger structures to withstand increased capacities and threats. Unfortunately, this is directly related to the lack of funding that would be required in order to make these ideas a reality. As we wrap up the video lecture for week 1, let's take a look at a few things we've discussed. First, the expanse of the U.S. infrastructure is far-reaching. It is apparent in all 50 states and 6 territories within the United States. We will require protection and security in order to maintain our current way of life. Next, we rely on these 16 sectors every minute of every day. Implications for the shutdown of infrastructure are psychological, economic, and personal. Finally, the condition of our country's infrastructure is unfortunately very decrepit. While some sectors may be somewhat better than others, the condition as a whole should be of the utmost concern and also has implications for those charged with its protection and security. This concludes the first week's lesson in HLS810. If you have any questions that come up about the course, please don't hesitate to contact me or your course facilitator. Have a wonderful week and good luck.